you did the introduction for me. I think this is a very important day for me and for a lot of other people being engaged on this project, because it has to be said, these 2 volumes are the last step of a project which is running for 20 years. 20 years is quite a long time, but the necessity to do it is existing also since a long time, and I think to fulfill all the conditions, I think a lot of work has to be done. I think I'm following this on behalf of my engagement for the Southeast European Cooperative Initiative a long time ago, for the Stability Pact for Southeast Europe also some time ago, and now I'm one of the founding fathers of the Regional Cooperation Council, where my friend Goran is working, and we are quite happy to fulfill it. You may understand it's a time to say thanks that we were able to arrive on this. I think there are a lot of people having been engaged, that this was really a very good cooperation of a lot of people. May I say, I can mention a lot of things, but the main idea was driven by Costa Caras. I have to say many thanks to you, because you have been always an advocate. And I think always very direct and tough what you are demanding. And that was really excellent. Many thanks to you, and for sure to Professor Kuluri, also the driving scientific force. But there were a lot of people behind. Those are not anymore with us, like John Brademas. Without him, I think we would not have the first steps of financing and so on and so on. May I say, it's usual coming to the European Union to speak about financing. I think that was a real problem. I think it's easier, may I say, to get money for highways than for education. I think this has to be considered also by the beloved European Parliament and by the European institutions. May I say, by my experience being engaged here in Southeast Europe and in transformation also in other parts of Europe, I think the main objective where we have to be engaged is for sure education. If we are doing nothing on education, I think you can do all the reforms, even judicial reform, and you can print papers a lot. But if we are not able, I think, to bring up quality of education, I'm a fan of Europe for my whole lifetime. But may I say that the European Union has, by the basic rules, no real responsibility on education matters. To do direct is a mistake. You are not responsible for this. Even I think by the current development we are getting, it will come out more and more that education is extremely necessary, because how to perceive the problems, how to handle them, is a problem of education, of the manner how we are treating it, the way how the dialogue is done, or is it a dialogue? It was already mentioned, the possibilities by internet and so on and so on. And so far, I have to say, on behalf of the Center for Democracy and Reconciliation, Southeast Europe, thanks to all who made it possible. And it was a very difficult job. I think we are quite happy here and so on, but we had phases where we were not really convinced that we can continue. Concerning of money, I think there was always engaged and huge interest and driving forces, but I think to bring up the money was quite difficult. I have to say many thanks to the European Commission that in the second part of the whole project it was possible to convince them, and hopefully for the future we will get also the money to continue this job we are doing. I think the real problem is, I don't want to blame that highways are built, but a highway you can really open. It's a celebration, ministers are coming, state presidents, commissioners, and so on and so on. But to open these efforts on education is extremely more difficult. And we had some phases where we were not yet convinced. On this point, I may say many thanks to those who were employed by the center, because we had some phases where we were paying only half of the wage, which we are obliged to pay, because we had no money. And we had all the conviction, I think we have to finish because it's ended, nobody is really interested, and so on and so on. You might understand, my job is not, I think, to break out into tears about this. because for my whole lifetime I'm prepared to run for money for projects which are important and so on and so on. That's a specific thing here, especially because education, cultural affairs, and so on, it's even more difficult to move money, but we are always very proud on this. I think the importance of the project is because this is a consequence to teach the background of the development of European values, how they are treated, how they are done. In the current days, if you are looking to the TV stations, to the different one, everybody is announcing by the difficulties of populism and values, values, values. I'm not quite sure if enough education is done that those who are announcing the values are able to define them, even to teach them. I think, therefore, this project is quite important. And I want to say some positive thing about the region. I think we were able to handle it, that these books are accepted as a background for education of teachers, that we are able to make seminars, and so on and so on. It's a positive sign by all the difficulties of the region. Even, I may say, in the current situation, Northeast Europe is even more stable than other parts of Europe. It's an irony, I may say, by the way, because all things were created by 4 horrible wars here in the region by the downfall of Yugoslavia. I think in this whole process, we have reached a certain point where we can say, okay, until here it's quite okay, but we have to continue this. That's not the reason why I'm mentioning that we need money. I think we need brain, we need character, we need ethics, we need engagement in this direction. To one I may say special thanks. The others are here. Nena Čebek was for a very long time responsible for the center, and in this critical time he was keeping us going, I may say, because I know always when he was phoning, it was by problems and not about proud results, which I think is also a pity. Beg your pardon that I'm mentioning somebody. I have to mention a long list. But on the way, I may say I'm happy that we have reached this point. And here, the situation here, being in this room, is giving hope that it might be continued. The humanities are unavoidable for a positive development of this Europe, and we have to stand for this. So far, I'm not only asking for money, I'm more asking for an engagement in this direction concerning education. And we are trying it on different fields, for example, by the Center for Advanced Studies, which we are doing in the Rijeka, because the humanities, the situation of the humanities in this region is not the best in general, but we can also discuss is the situation of the humanities in general in Europe at the best, or in other questions. But this is a question which everybody has to answer for himself. So far, again, many thanks on behalf of the Center. Many thanks to those who have been employed, who have been engaged, who have been on the board. It's a long list, but I think it was a real engagement. And if I'm sometimes considering what was possible and where I've been engaged and was taking part, these are the one thing we can a little bit proud on this. Not on books and not on printed paper, but on the efforts behind this and the reason why we are doing it. Because this understanding of history, the confrontation of different perception, I think this is, by the educational way, a very important thing. This perception of the differences is quite necessary, because only by this way we are learning really out of history. Because we have always asked us, are we learning really out of history? But this is a question which you can answer for yourself quite better than I can now say it to you. Many thanks for your patience, for your help, whoever did something for this, and the request, it has to be done in the future. And it has to be monitored also by the European institutions, because this is a part of content of Europe. We have not only a proud history, we have also a very difficult history. And we have all the difficulties to perceive this history in the right way. The differences are really big. We won't overcome it, but we should know the different perceptions. This is one of the main things which is here done in a real good way. Beg your pardon for fiddling on your nerves. I'm quite glad to be here at this point of the development.
Thank you very much, Erhard, also for reminding us how important there is that there are not just funds, but also commitment to the topic of education. And I'd like to add one point. You said the difference, one of the differences why there might be more money for highways or infrastructure than for education is because you can open a building or a road. I think the other thing is also that there is the chance to get some money in some people's private pockets with big infrastructure projects, which in education is not that easy, because it's really about people. But apart from that, thank you. Now we have Zvezdana Kovac, who is going to present. You are the Executive Director of CDRSEE, and you will present as the Joint History Project as a whole.
Yeah,
Please,
I will try. Yeah.